was trying to think of like what can we really talk about today. You've have such a vast knowledge of things that you've accomplished in your life and are continually doing, and really not even just in the hunting world, but in the conservation and just across the whole globe. So I thought today we would kind of start off. So my hunting page on Facebook has really evolved around, and really my motto is conservation, camaraderie, and community. I grew up with the old school deer camps in Michigan, hunted with my dad, his friends, and a lot of those traditions are still continued. And sadly, some of as things have evolved in the hunting world, some of it has changed over the time too. Some of the deer camps have gotten smaller and smaller, and so I try to keep those old fashioned traditions that I grew up with still instilled in what I portray to the people that follow me. So it's always meant a lot to me, and it's never been just about the harvest, just about the kill. It's really been about spending time with family and friends, and I know that's something that's been very passionate to you, Jim, over your times. So I think I wanted to start out with there's maybe some people that really haven't the younger generation of hunters that I know as times evolve, there's a lot of different people that have come around within the hunting community on TV and in just the social media world. Um, what would you tell people that really don't know you real good? What really created who is Jim Shockey? Um, what really shaped how was like your family, your dad, people that you've hunted with, how was that shaped who you are today?
Well, I mean, I grew up with a father and in a family that was old school, just like you
Hmm.
talked about. So there's respect for elders, there's honor, there's always tell the truth, hard work, and
Hmm.
little sayings like any job worth doing is worth doing well. So
Right.
so I grew up old school. I didn't there was no pandering to us as children.
Hmm.
Children had to show respect to elders. I mean,
Yeah.
be seen, not heard, and the things that I mean, that make our countries, Canada, the United States, so great.
Right.
The principles that it's founded on, the virtues that these countries um, were built on is how I was raised. You
Yeah.
know, and certainly differently than how children are raised nowadays. I mean, the world did not revolve around us,
Right.
when I was young, and demonstrative. I don't think I ever heard anybody tell me they love me. My parents, I don't know that ever until they were. My mom was much older. Dad never.
Yeah.
So I grew up like that. It's and if you get in a fight, hit the other person first. Dad would say,
Yeah.
serve them breakfast, even if they serve you lunch and dinner. Like this is how I grew up with, and sports were good, business
Yeah.
was bad. Yeah, that
Now
was
you grew up in a like with a family where really it wasn't just about hunting. I mean, it was really to provide for your family, literally.
yeah, yeah,
Where I know you talked about that, where if you didn't bring some game home, you might go a season without some meat.
yeah. Moose particularly. If my dad didn't get his moose every fall, we didn't eat meat. I mean,
Yeah.
we ate macaroni, and we
Yeah.
didn't. There'd be chickens you'd get from the farm, but you wouldn't go buy a cow. I mean, it just wasn't done.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could buy a cow until I think I was in high school. That wasn't an alternative for
Yeah.
us, or sandwich meat or any of that stuff. We didn't do. I grew up in a trailer park,
Okay.
and when they eventually bought a house, mom and dad, the conversations at dinner were always whether dad would get laid off, whether we'd lose the house, the mortgage, we wouldn't be able to pay it. I didn't know what a mortgage was, but I knew my parents were afraid, and that made me terrified. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, for us, for my dad, that deer running across the field was a hamburger. There was no spiritual connection with this animal
Yeah.
whatsoever. They didn't have the luxury of that. It
Yeah.
was, you kill the animal, you butcher it up, and get back to work by that afternoon. So a perfect hunt for him, opening
Yeah.
morning, done at by 8 a.m. and back at work at noon. That was a perfect
Yeah.
opening day for deer season. Of course, deer wouldn't feed a family for the whole winter. A moose
Right.
would. So yeah, we needed a moose, and it wasn't like we were poor, but we
Yeah.
didn't. We certainly didn't have a lot of money.
Now, being you've hunted across the whole globe basically in different types of game, um, you've seen, I'm sure, a lot of different cultures from within, different people that you've directly hunted with or have been around. Now, has what really stands out, like differences between that culture to like Western culture, as far as how the outlook of hunters in the U.S. or Canada look at hunting compared to from where some of these places that you visited and hunted.
Yeah, hunters are hunters around this world. We are kindred spirits. So there's
Mhm.
really no difference in
Okay.
terms of the actual hunter's perspective on hunting. So, and it doesn't kings, queens, paupers, it doesn't matter. A tribal um, hunter providing for his family in West Africa, Cameroon, compared to, a prince
Hmm.
with from the royal family hunting in Germany.
Yeah.
The hunting is still hunting. Now, there's traditions involved with the hunting that are different and skills that are certainly different.
Yeah.
We don't compare to the Bushman trackers over in Namibia. I mean, we're literally we're blind compared to them.
Yeah.
So, there's difference in skill levels and by necessity, but they couldn't shoot a running deer at 200 yards. Mind you,
Yeah.
most of us can't either, but they don't even have guns. So,
Right.
so it's, but the actual core of the hunter, the spirit of the hunter doesn't change no matter where you are around the world. In
Okay.
Iran, Pakistan, they're still hunters, and we're kindred spirits. We have that in common, even if our religions are totally different. The way we dress is different. The languages are
Yeah.
different. The color of our skin is different. What we eat, it's different. When it comes to hunting, we're the same inside. We have the same spirit living inside of us.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. I was kind of curious on that. Like when you arrived at different types of places, was there really any differences, or was it pretty much all the same? And you pretty much answered that for me. Um, Now, as far as when it goes back to in today's world with getting people involved with hunting, um, I know there's this thing with just some of the younger kids nowadays where they get so hooked onto social media, onto their electronics and stuff. As a parent, as a dad yourself, like when your daughter and your son and stuff came up and talked about hunting and how and when they got involved to the point where they decided they wanted to hunt, what would you tell a parent in today's world? Is because I see that a lot of times. I know I have some close family friends themselves where their child is kind of into hunting, but they're really not. They're kind of not sure yet, and it's like you need to kind of just step back a little bit and give them a little time. Is that kind of what you would suggest, or how would you, as a parent, how would you approach that?
Well, I never forced Louisiana. I never forced either Brandon or Eva
Hmm.
to follow in my footsteps. I mean, Louisa was vegetarian when we met, and
Okay.
certainly would never hurt a fly. I mean, she literally would shoo flies out the window.
Hmm.
That's how gentle and
Yeah.
kind she was. And I'm who I am.
Right.
And Louisa always said, if she had to hunt, she would, but why bother? Because, my husband is this guy and our
Right.
freezers are full. So there's
Hmm.
no need for her to hunt. But
Okay.
so she wasn't against it. She just didn't do it. Um, that all said, you don't, I think someday they'll isolate the gene that makes somebody a hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all have the ability to hunt. We always had historically, but historically, 10% of us were good at it, and the other
Yeah.
90% was kind of crappy at it. And I think and the reason is because we cared. We were into it. So I
Just very
think they'll
passionate. Yeah.
isolate the gene someday, which means, if I truly believe that not everybody, just because you're a hunter doesn't mean your children are going to hunt. Eva, Louise thought for sure she was going to be a dancer, yoga instructor like Louise was, a
Hmm.
lady, graceful and dignified. And Eva came back from university at 21, and said, Dad, I want you to teach me how to hunt. I mean, Louise and I, our mouths just about fell open like, what? I actually said to her, you haven't talked to me since you're 14 and now you want to learn how to hunt.
Yeah.
And there's a case of if I'd have pushed Eva into it earlier in her life, she wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
But if she's got that gene, eventually it's going to manifest itself, and it did. She wanted to learn how to hunt. Our
Okay.
son Brandon was an avid, fanatic little hunter when he was young. Um, and then when he turned 16, he came to me. He's a super smart guy, the smartest person I know. And he said, Dad, if I continue in the hunting industry as a hunter, I'll always be in your shadow. Everyone will say whatever I've accomplished was because of you, and they'll
Mm.
denigrate whatever I do accomplish. So he said, I just can't go down that route. So I'm gonna stay in the hunting industry, but on the production side, I want to be the best at that.
Okay.
Uh, but he, consciously walked away from the hunting. I don't know that he's hunted anything in years. He's my son, and he
Yeah.
was an avid hunter. So you just don't know. So what you have to do is expose your children to it, to the
Yeah.
hunting world, to the outdoors, and take them on hikes, where they're going to see things. Show them the wonders of
Mm.
here's wild mushrooms. Look at the butterfly. What kind of tree is that? And this bark does this, and don't eat that because it's poison. And look at the deer over there, and that's
Yeah.
a buck, and this is a rut, this is a scrape. Look at the birds. Like all this is exposing them to the wonders of being a hunter in a very gentle way. And they'll remember that. Down
Yeah.
the road, someday they're gonna be sitting there in their classroom at university, or maybe it's in high school, and they're gonna go, oh, I'd rather be hunting today, and I'd rather be. I remember I really
Yeah.
felt good. They'll be in some crappy job that they don't like, and go, I remember I felt joy when I was out there, and
Yeah.
felt the warm breeze and heard the leaves rustling in the trees, and heard a twig snap from a deer when I was,
Mm.
sneaking with my dad, saw a rabbit, and maybe I want that feeling again, rather than this, you know, hustle and bustle of this world,
Yeah.
and watching your screen all day long, and basically soul sucking, you know, computer social
Right.
media crap that, yeah, it feels good for those, that while you're watching the, clips that are kind of fun of whatever we watch. Mine always shows me UFC and animals, over in Africa eating other
Yeah.
animals, like, for whatever reason. But I feel dirty after. I feel violated after, 2 hours later. I go, oh my gosh, I've been watching this crap, you know, and I don't feel good about myself after I watch that. And I get caught in that. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
as
It's
avid
easy
a
to
hunter as
do.
you can get. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
easy. So that siren call is very difficult. You've got to balance it with just as much peace and wonder of the natural world. You know,
Yeah.
even finding arrowheads, looking, for seashells, pretty rocks, it doesn't matter. Fossils is fun, just take them and expose them to the outdoors in a passive way. Don't
Hmm.
necessarily make them, go hunting. But some of those youngsters, they want to. They want to be
Yeah.
part of the deer hunt. They want to be part of that. You're going duck hunting. Oh, they'll sit there,
Yeah.
or bears. I remember Brandon at 10 years of age with his little rubber boots hiking 10 miles we hiked that day. And
Yeah.
and because he was that fascinated with hunting of the bears. So the child will show it, and just don't force them. And eventually
Yeah.
they'll come back to it like Eva did.
Yeah, I think it is pretty important, and I know that's one thing, especially with social media, is really portraying hunting in a very positive light. And to me, family photos, being with your kids, everything in the photos, and just giving them a good outlook, because so many of the people that are don't know what hunting is, don't really understand what hunting's about, really just think it's about shooting a deer, shooting an animal, and it's
Yeah.
so much more than that. And that's where I think when it comes even to the camp life and being with your friends, and I mean, there's that whole adage or the whole phrase where there's no such thing as a bad day hunting, and there really isn't, because there's just so much that evolves around that day, being with your friends and just being outdoors and just enjoying all that. And as you just said there, where it's just so important. And in today's world of the hustle and bustle, yeah, it's very important that we get around and get a chance to get away for that little time. And I had a question from one of my cousins. He does a lot. Him and his dad do some hunting across the U.S. and I've done some hunting up in Canada. And he knew I was going to talk to you. And he was curious, like as hunting has evolved with equipment, um, leasing, just really almost everything has changed over the last few decades as far as Italians the way we approach hunting. And he was really like, how do we keep hunting to within cost? How do we keep it so it doesn't turn into like a rich man's activity? Because I mean, like I know even in Michigan right now, leasing property has gotten crazy, buying property has gotten crazy. Um, Even I mean, as far as trying to go on a guided hunt up to Alaska or something like that. Um, Being you've traveled all over, is there anything you really would suggest to that on that topic? Like what in the industry could change, or can anything change?
That's a tough one, and I'm going
Yeah,
to answer it metaphorically. Um, when I was younger, I lived in Vancouver, had antique stores, and there was a building that was for sale, and I don't know what it was, $150,000,
yeah,
which was outlandish, the dumbest price anybody like. And me and my buddies looked at that and said, "Oh, that's just so dumb."
yeah,
The price is way too high, it's too expensive, and we whined and complained about it, and we didn't buy it. But another person did, and they just sold that for $3 million.
yeah,
So we have to we have to look at the bigger picture on this. Why did that place that we thought was so outlandishly expensive at the time, why did it suddenly go for $3 million?
yeah,
A bunch of years later, and it had many offers on it. So something happened. What was that?
hmm,
And what happens is supply and demand. And I don't care who you are out there in
yeah,
this world right now, there the supply of hunting locations is limited, and the demand for those hunting locations is higher than what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the good old days when it was all
yeah,
free. Things have changed. And if we think that demand is going to go down and prices are going to go down, like we thought that house for
yeah,
$150,000 was going to go down, we're living in Disneyland.
yeah,
It's not going to go down, and the reality is that there's more people wanting to hunt than there was, and more people willing to pay the price to hunt than there was. And because we don't think that's right, because we're not willing to do what that person is, or not willing to spend the money like the person that spent the $150,000 on that property. I wasn't willing, and he was.
yeah,
And look what he reaped the benefits. So that person that's leasing that land for this outlandish price that we think is just absurd because it was half that 10 years ago, and before that
right,
we didn't even have to pay for land. We just went hunting wherever we felt like.
right,
If we think that it's going to go down and there's going to be less
right,
people wanting to hunt, again, we're living in Disneyland, just like I was when I thought that house wasn't worth
yeah,
it, or that property. So there's 8 billion of us in this world now. That's more than there was 20 years ago, significantly more.
yeah,
And 20 years from now, there's going to be significantly more than 8 billion people.
right,
And last I looked, we're not creating more land out there. In fact,
true,
we're turning more of it into, parks, or
right, yeah,
easements for paddle boarding, or hiking for people that are non-consumptive users of the wildlands. Or we're realizing that if we till this soil and grow soybeans for biofuels, it's worth more than the land is worth. So, the reality is that the prices aren't going to go down. And
yeah,
it's not, the good old days are gone, and it's not a bad thing in some ways, because we have to compete against the soybean farmers. And
yeah,
I'm using, again, that's figuratively speaking, whatever they're going. It doesn't matter, corn, apples, whatever the demand is, Christmas trees, it doesn't matter. The demand for that land to pay for itself, to pay for its own way, to pay for the person that owns it to own that land and increase the value on that land, we've got to compete against that as hunters. And and uh, and it's a good thing that we have to. The more money
Yeah.
we actually spend, even though we hate the idea, I hate it,
Yeah.
but even though we hate it, it's better to spend millions of dollars for a lease. Whatever. If you got to get 1,000 buddies together, spend $1 million,
Yeah.
make that land stay as wildlife habitat is what we really need to do.
Yeah.
So we've got to compete against the industries or the forces that actually allow the owner of the land to capitalize on that land. We need to be the ones that they're capitalizing on. Great. You think that they're not going to turn all those soybean fields into wildlife habitat for white-tailed deer
Yeah.
if we're paying $1 million a lease? Of course they are. Everyone out there is going, well, I don't have $1 million. Well, I know. And therein lies the problem is
Yeah.
that the demand for the land, and it's not, rich people. I hear that all the time, rich people. The people that have the desire will do it. I'll guarantee there's people leasing land in Michigan that just have the desire. They're not any
Yeah.
richer than you are, or
True.
your buddy is, or cousin, whoever it was. Um, they just have more desire. And there's no limit to desire, but desire's need.
Yeah.
So they don't go buy a new car. They live with their old truck for another 10
Yeah.
years and they have whitetail land. So yeah, unfortunately, the demand, and we haven't even started with what's going to happen if the Chinese start hunting. 1.3 billion of them,
Yeah.
and historically 10% are hunters in this planet.
True.
If they start going around the world hunting for moose, I mean, I've said it. I think moose prices are going to go up to $100,000
Hmm.
down the road, even though it seems absurd that they're at $40,000 right now. And 20 years ago, when I bought my Rogue River outfitting territory, they were $7,000. To even think that they'd go to 8,000 was
Yeah.
crazy, cuckoo. Who would pay that? Well, guess
People
what? The
do.
more
Yeah.
demand there is in this world, it's just, what is it,
Sure.
Keynesian economics, is supply and demand.
So on that topic, then, um, I don't know if you have any experience with that or not, or maybe Michigan right now, and I don't think it's even just a Michigan problem. I don't know if it's really even a problem, but Michigan, we're in our state, southern part of Michigan, explosion of deer numbers. And the problem we're having now, and I was part of one of the Michigan councils in one of their groups for trying to come up with solutions. So the problem we have, like Michigan's kind of threefold. You have the southern part of northern lower than the upper peninsula. Years ago, most of your deer are always in the upper peninsula and lower peninsula. Well, right now our deer have shifted mainly into urban areas. And these areas are all farm country, farm owned. And when we're talking farm, a lot of them are commercial. We're talking a couple thousand acres. We're not talking like a 100-acre farm or nothing. Or we have issues with city ordinances where you can't hunt. And I know it's right now, we're just having a lot of problems with excessive deer, and they're trying to reduce deer numbers in these areas to help farmers, car collisions and everything like that. What in your mind, I mean, is there a solution to that really, as far as, and it's really, it boils down to getting access to these places where hunters just aren't able to get into, and yet it's kind of a twofold, and yet you have to have access. Um, have you ever really had any experience in that type of hunting before, or those type of experiences?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in a trailer park, as I said,
Yeah,
so I wasn't going to go buy a hunt somewhere or pay for hunting. So I had to get permission on land.
yeah,
Now, back when I was growing up, it was kind of accepted that if you had land, you just let hunters go on it. But
yeah,
as as really the urban crowd started buying acreages further and further away from town, who wants to live in a big city? It's
yeah,
horrible. And no matter how you slice or dice it, you're going to live 10 years less because you live in a situation like that, noise and smog and
Right.
horns blowing and sirens going. I mean, so people bought acreages. Well, then they started posting because they don't want anybody driving on their land and
Yeah.
shooting deer and their house is there and it's not as big a properties. So to get permission was very difficult. I mean, I got turned down tons of times. I did
Yeah.
my very best and put on my sweetest, cutest face and look how cute I am and nice and I'm really a good guy in conservation, blah blah blah. And I get turned down. I didn't get permission to hunt in those places. Um, so yeah, I've had experience with that. Of course I have. And most of my hunting was done on public land because up here in Canada we have a lot of public land.
Yeah.
So eventually that's where you end up gravitating to and hunting on in the very north of Saskatchewan because there's it's public land. Anybody can hunt there, but anybody can hunt there too. So you're dealing with the masses. You know, other people all over the place and bumping into other hunters, although it's not as nearly, uh, you know, not nearly as many hunters as there would be in Michigan, of course. So,
Yeah.
what I thought was a lot of hunters is nothing compared to Michigan, I'm sure. So, yeah, the access is a problem. Now, your northern area, just so I understand, why did the deer leave? Was it wolves or was it
Well,
habitat
that's
loss?
one topic that I wanted to ask you about. Not really get too long a discussion on it, but there is this discussion in Michigan right now with the Upper Peninsula, and not even just with wolves, is really with predators in general, bears and coyotes and everything. Um, and yet there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. I mean, everybody's got a opinion on wolves, everybody's got opinion on bears and deer numbers and things like that. You've been around and literally been around that type of I mean, been around those predators and seen in their natural habitat and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about really just some really truths with predators and their effect, not only on deer, but really just the whole ecosystem up in areas like that?
Sure, I can talk about it from layman's terms. So my
Yeah,
observations, being feet on the ground, not a
yeah,
a environmental scientist that is doing a dissertation or a paper from a university somewhere. So, I can talk from feet on the ground. This is my
yeah.
experience. Back in the 90s, early 90s, I started buying outfitting territories in northern Saskatchewan and ended up with 3 outfitting territories. Um, I had 130 whitetail tags. And before that, they would allow 2 hunters or 2 deer per hunter. So it would have
Okay,
been 260, but they changed it to 1 deer per hunter back, I don't know, 40, 35 years ago. So I had 130 tags and I was selling 130 hunts to American hunters who came up and hunted Saskatchewan.
okay,
3 different territories I bought. Um, in 2007, we had a bad winter, and I would say that 70% of the deer died. That bad winter also brought the wolves from further north into the territory. Again, this is layman talking, so
yep,
not science, just
right,
saying, okay, we used to see packs of wolves, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 wolves to 10 wolves. And suddenly we were seeing packs of 30 to 40 wolves. Again, this is layman
right,
observations. Um, it took the deer 5 years to recover from that, and with the
okay,
wolves and whatnot. Now, we weren't allowed to shoot any wolves.
right,
Only the trappers were allowed to kill the wolves. But the deer did recover, from that 70% hit. So 2012, I took, um, I didn't take any hunters at all
okay,
from 2007 to 2012. So remember, how much money I've got invested into these areas,
right,
lodges that sit there closed up all winter, just mice chewing on them. 2012, I booked 12 hunters as an experiment. No, that's not what I did was I sold 90 of my tags off to somebody, and I basically another outfitter, and I couldn't sell them 90 tags at $10,000 each that I paid for them back when, because there just wasn't the number of deer. So I sold them
yeah,
to them at about $2,000 a tag, huge loss. Um, So I had 40 tags left. And in 2012, I decided to take some hunters. I took 12 hunters. We were successful in all 12 and good deer,
Okay.
average 150, a good quality deer. The
Yeah.
deer numbers were back up again. 2013, we had a bad winter, and I'd say we lost 70% of the deer population again, the deer that
Mm,
recovered. 2014, we had another bad winter, and now I'd say that 95% of our deer had died,
mm,
and the wolves were down by the droves. Um, I have never taken another hunter since, another paying client. I let Eva hunt there once or twice, and I let Tim hunt there once.
yeah.
They got deer, but I've never taken another paying client since then. So since 2007, I've taken 12 paying clients.
Mm,
I've lost a fortune,
yeah.
relative for me, a fortune growing
Right.
up in a trailer park guy. Um, and I still have the 40 tags in that lodge, and I have not taken a hunter, since 2000, well, 14 or 12.
Mm,
That's 13 years. So, what's the problem? What caused that? Why haven't the deer recovered? Because they hit such a low number, and this is again a layman talking, not a scientist,
yeah.
just from my observations being feet on the ground watching out there. And I still bait and I still set out trail cameras as if I had 40 hunters. So I'm still paying all the dollars every year that I would pay in expenses other than food because we
Hmm.
don't have it. But I pay guides wages for but just one guide to go do all the baiting basically and set up trail cameras and let's monitor because I want to know before I book hunters how many deer are there. The wolves that we got on camera, the number of tracks we would see, the number of wolves sightings by that person doing the baiting for me. Um, when you see a group of, just pick a number, 10 wolves, and they're killing an average of one deer a week. Now, yeah, okay, maybe they kill some rabbits, but they
Yeah.
run out of rabbits eventually. Maybe they kill the odd partridge. Um, Maybe they get together and take a moose down occasionally or dig a bear out of its den. But generally, it's about a deer a week per wolf. That's 10 deer a week, and you've got 52 weeks a year. Do the math.
Yeah.
Do the math. That's 500 deer gone in a territory that last year we had I think 11 bucks on camera.
Mm,
You know, how is a deer supposed to recover when their
right.
wolves are that predominant, in the area, the predators, and that goes across the gambit of predators. I mean, grizzly bears. I think,
Yeah.
and don't quote me on this, but I believe they did studies up in Alaska, and a big male grizzly on average was killing 32 calf caribou and calf moose every spring.
Mm,
So if your grizzly bear hunting is curtailed, if you don't manage these predators, they do what predators do. They
yeah.
boom and bust. Now, the difference with wolves is we've made logging roads everywhere. So we've turned the wolves into uber predators. They just run the logging road till they hit a deer
Okay.
track, go kill the deer. Back on the logging road, run it till they hit another deer track, go kill the deer. In the olden days, they'd have to fan out and,
Yeah.
bust their tails trying to get to the animals. Now we make it easy. Snowmobile trails. They can run them all winter and hit a deer track, boom, kill it. So,
Hmm.
so this isn't the same wolves that our grandparents dealt with. These are
Yeah.
uber predators because of our own behavior. We've turned them into these great predators and killing machines. So, I mean, I love the sound of a wolf howling. There's nothing more beautiful. Maybe a loon,
Yeah.
calling on a quiet lake with the fog and the mist, or maybe an elk bugle. A wolf howl is fabulous. I love it. And I'm not a believer in kill all the predators,
Yeah.
but I am a believer in managing
Management.
the predators. And then, guys will say, if I don't kill it, I'm not going to eat it. I'm not going to kill it. And yeah, I mean that's great for that's their philosophy, and I accept that. That's their
Yeah.
opinion. But I'm a believer in managing the predators.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted was just, I mean, you had experience with that because too many times you just read articles and there's not really any, as you said, boots on the ground, really just hearsay, and so I thought that was good to just hear your point of view from that topic, because this definitely is talked about, and um, it seems like everybody's got a different opinion on it, and some whether it's science or not, and so it's kind of good to hear directly from you who've had some experience with that, and I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
remember, it's not science.
Yeah, exactly.
Minor observations,
Yeah,
and financial realities for me. Why
right,
can't I book hunters? I got 40 tags now.
right.
Well, because I can't justify taking their money because I can't find them a deer. Why can't I find them a deer? Well,
Right.
I mean, it's not because we're killing them. Certainly isn't hunting pressure. So what's killing the deer? Why aren't they
Yeah.
recovering from, and yes, you can factor in habitat. Maybe the logging practices are causing some of it, but I mean, they were logging like that before and there was lots of deer. So
Yeah.
what's happened? Well, they've hit a number that's so low that it's just going to take decades for them to recover, in my opinion, in that area. From my observation, I don't see the numbers increasing at all from the almost zero
Hmm.
to now zero plus one or two or three. Like it's not a, it's they just got hit so hard, and I believe it's the predators. The winters caused it, or enabled the predators, and our logging practices enable them further.
Yeah.
Um, and that's my observations. And
Okay.
like it or not, love
Yeah,
wolves,
appreciate it.
hate wolves, whatever
Yeah.
this is just my observations on it. You have to control predators.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. So as we get towards the end here, I wanted to just shift back to some deer hunting. You've always been very, I think one topic I wanted to have you talk a little bit about is not how to like keeping deer not pressured, like how, different tactics, different ways that a hunter either ruins a hunt by overpressuring deer or what maybe they're not doing to prevent from doing that. Can you talk a little bit about on that topic as far as some experiences you had?
Yeah, sure. I mean, now, over the last 30 years, I put together land in Saskatchewan. So I actually have a ranch in the
Hmm.
southern part of Saskatchewan, just within Saskatoon's city limits, or the
Cool.
Corman Park municipality. So that ranch, 2,200 acres, um, I make every effort when I go in to sit on my stand to be as unobtrusive as possible. So I don't go walking through my land rattling all the time, trying to, and there's bad days where they're
Yeah.
not going to be moving today, but I still don't go, I don't succumb to that siren call to get out there and try and go after them. You'll kill any deer out there if you're patient enough. It's a matter of, even if they're totally nocturnal. The last buck, now not everybody has the luxury. I'm very fortunate, and I realize it's not it's not everybody's doesn't have the same opportunity that I do. I
Yeah.
hunt Saskatchewan on my own ranch. It's private, and no one's bugging me on there. But there was a buck 3 years ago, big non-typical deer that I had on camera once 2 years before, once in daylight, and any other photographs of it were nighttime. So once that whole season, not one single picture of it the next year, zero
Hmm.
pictures of it. And then it showed up again on my land. And again, all nocturnal pictures. So I sat on that deer basically from the 15th of August or 15th of October. And I think I got it on the 23rd of November.
Okay.
And I was there most days. I
Hmm.
don't know how many, over 30 days I sat on stand. And I sat there morning, like walked in the morning, pitch dark, to make sure I didn't, bump deer and disturb the deer. Um, and sit on the stand until noonish, and then I'd go check my trail cameras and come back, sit from 2 o'clock till pitch dark, and then walk out. So over 30 days, I think it was 33 days or something like that. And suddenly he walked in at 4 in the afternoon, just like he'd done it every single day. And I know he hadn't done it every single day because I
Yeah.
had cameras on every single place he could have crossed. And I mean, I could pinpoint, I'd have him on 10 different cameras during the night, as he made his rounds looking for does and traveling on this trail or that road and on my own land. which was fortunate because if he'd have stepped off my land, it's like there nobody
Yeah.
no big deer survives stepping off my land. They just don't. This year there was five big deer and four of them got killed as soon as they stepped across the
Yeah.
fence line. Literally as soon as they crossed
Okay.
the fence. And I got the fifth one and it was the smallest one of the bunch. The ones I was targeting just slowly boop, doop, 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 because they made their own mistake. But so let time do the work for you.
Mhm.
It's not easy. It's easy for me to say because I have
Oh,
the
yeah.
luxury of the time, but I'm also, you know, 67. Lots of guys are my age and they're retired. They have nothing but time if they actually
Yeah.
get off the couch. So yeah, time will beat those deer, and don't go force it.
Yeah.
Let time do the work for you. If you force it, you are gonna either send them across the fence line where they're gonna get killed by the neighbor, which happens in my area. And I'm sure it happens in many areas. Why
Yeah.
do it? Just sit and wait. That's the greatest whitetail hunters I know. That's how they got all their big deer. A lot, you can luck into them, sure,
Yeah.
but the best consistent hunters are extremely patient. They don't go force it. They're not
Mhm.
rattling all the time, giving away their location. They're not
Okay.
grunting, storm up. And it all depends on the situation too. Like I don't hunt Michigan, so what I'm saying may not even apply. And everybody out there in
Right.
Michigan right now is listening to this and going, "What a dummy!" That's not going to work in our area. And I, to be fair, I get that. I
Yeah.
understand that. But in my area, this is what I do. I just sit patiently and wait.
Yeah, I think a
Like,
lot of it does apply to Michigan, though. I mean, because one tactic I think most hunters do, I mean, because there's a lot of people, everybody's getting up. I mean, you sit in your blind all day long. Heck, somebody's always up going back for breakfast or going to lunch or coming back. And I know a lot of deer I've taken over the years have happened right around noon, 1 o'clock when people are getting antsy or getting cold and going back to the truck to
sure.
warm up. So it definitely does pay to sit and
Yeah.
be patient, as you said. Um, and believe me, if you're not seeing deer, there's always something else to be watching in the woods or just enjoying the peace and
Absolutely.
quiet away from work and things like that. Um, let me one last question, and I'll leave this up to you. Give me one random deer hunting tip that you could give, whether the person's inexperienced, a new hunter, or somebody that's maybe has lots of years hunting. What tip would you give a person? Um,
I have three rules that I tell my clients and I tell, my guides and I remember myself,
yeah,
like, we read all this hunt deer in their bedroom, hunt deer on the full moon, hunt deer on the, whatever, the back end of a weather front or front end
yeah,
of the weather front or, you know, hunt them in their travel corridors and their, the pinch points and all this crap.
yeah.
And, and here's what I say to that. The three rules of deer hunting that everybody needs to remember.
Okay.
Deer do what they do, deer are where they are, and deer move when they move. Those are the three rules. And all
Mhm.
that other stuff, yeah, you may increase your odds by this much,
Yeah,
but um, those three rules, they apply to every single deer out there. Every single deer hunter should remember them. And the one overriding rule that negates all of those rules
okay.
and overcomes those three rules, because I mean, deer do what they do, they move where they move, and they are where they are. You're pretty helpless. You're sitting
Right.
there. You're just basically, it's the whims of nature. The deer decides when it's. So the one overriding rule is time. Time. Put your
Mhm.
time in, because eventually they're going to do what they do right in front of you, or
Yeah,
they're
true.
going to move where they move right in front of you. They're going to are where they are right in front of you, but you've got to be there. So
Yeah,
again, it comes back to the same thing we talked about, 30 days. I waited 23 days one time for a 193 buck.
yeah,
Uh, every single day, all day long, waited for him and finally got him. Time. Doesn't matter what deer do, doesn't matter where they move, doesn't matter,
yeah,
where they are. If you put enough time in, you're going to get that deer. If you think you're gonna, instant gratification, like our social media word, I can, you know, in 20 seconds watch 10 UFC fights.
yeah.
if you think that's going to happen on a deer hunt, it can, but if you're expecting that or going in with that forethought, you're you're going to be sadly disappointed. So go
Yeah.
in with the understanding that time will get you that big deer or whatever deer you're after. Just time, time,
Awesome.
time, time, no matter where you're hunting. And yeah, there's more time in some places than other places.
Right.
So maybe I've just made somebody out there saying, well, I have to sit for 365 days to see a deer then. Well, yeah, that's where you're
That's
hunting.
what it takes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reality of where you're hunting.
Yeah.
But the only way you're going to overcome that is putting time in.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time with me today and just really get a little more insight on who Jim Shockey is and some of your hunting experience. Do you have any upcoming? I mean, I know you're on the road, it seems like all the time. Are you getting set for any trips recently or coming up or?
Yeah, I was just in Africa. I just got back.
Yeah, I was following some of that online.
Yeah, for 3 weeks, and I'll be heading back there. I'm going to hunt Rusa deer, Javan Rusa deer in Mauritius.
Okay.
That'll be fun. I've never been to Mauritius. It's a little island off the coast of Madagascar,
Oh,
which is off the coast of
very
East
cool.
Africa. So I'll go there and also to Madagascar, but just I want to see the lemurs and
Yeah.
Ethiopia. I want to go to Lalibela, the those 800-year-old churches that they carved out of the stone mountain. So those are things that are coming up. As soon as the end of August rolls around, I'll be up in my Yukon outfitting territory,
Okay.
Rogue River outfitting territory for moose, caribou, um, hopefully a couple wolves. The When I get back from that, we head to the Middle East. I'll be doing some hunting, and
Okay.
I think, but I know I have to fly to Qatar to be at a hunting convention there,
Hmm.
and there to Kuwait, and from there to the Arab Emirates, where I believe I'll be hunting a couple of gazelle species. Um,
Yeah, I,
and
I followed a lot of your pictures from your trip to Africa recently with Serena. It looks like she had a great time. I mean, really just amazed at,
yeah,
I mean, the stuff that you've shown her, which is really cool. I mean, it really came through in a lot of the photos that you had posted, and they were really cool looking through some of that stuff. Looks like she's very passionate and stuff that you're doing, and I think that's really cool that you're able to post a lot of those pictures for us to see that, and I think I really appreciate that.
yeah, I share it to inspire. I went through a tough time with losing
Yeah,
my
you did.
my wife,
Yeah,
Louise, in 2023. So, to show people that you can find joy again in
right,
after the deepest sorrow. I mean, we were soulmates for 39 years,
right.
113 days, 14 and a half hours. We were, lived a fairy tale, and then I
Hmm.
lost her. And yeah, I can wallow in those depths of sorrow
Yeah,
and be lonely and depressed, or I can, you know, come back to this beautiful, amazing world we live in
right.
and understand that every day is precious and allow myself to feel joy and love again.
Yeah,
So
I,
yeah, so Serena, it was really wonderful for me because
it's good.
I've been there many times to those places, Tanzania, never to
Yeah,
Kenya, but to Tanzania, and to be able to see them through fresh eyes,
yeah.
and believe me, Serena, she's lifetime vegetarian. Like
Yeah,
she
I
sits
remember
there,
when you guys started. I
yeah,
remember reading that. I was like, wow. It's like,
yeah.
oh,
Everybody thinks they're changing. She's going to change me. No, yeah, I'm not have no intention of changing her. I think it's great.
yeah,
Eat what you want. I don't care.
yeah,
Anybody out there, eat what you want. I know
yeah,
I'm going to eat what I like. Last night I had 3 crabs and about, boy, I feel so full, about 1,000 shrimp and prawns and an
yeah.
octopus. I'm going to eat that.
See
And
that
Serena
that's
was
what's kind
like,
of fun about your page too. A lot of photos because you're seeing like showing her a lot of stuff and she's showing you a lot of stuff, and
yeah,
there's kind of that comical side to it too. I mean, you'll come through a beat and something's like, wow, Jim Shockey's eating that or whatever, and so I think that's really cool that you guys were to get that connection like that, and
of course. Let you know every day is precious, and there's
yeah,
there's a
definitely.
wonder. I mean, I've learned more about making salads than I ever imagined could exist. And she's not only vegetarian; she's a picky vegetarian. She's not
Oh, really?
vegan.
Okay.
She doesn't like onions, doesn't like mushrooms, doesn't like eggplant, and that's
Yeah,
all vegetarian stuff to me. So
yeah,
I've learned all this, and her, she has amazing taste buds. She can taste somebody at a restaurant recently. She ordered a vegetarian dish and had the big green leaves on it. It's vegetarian.
Yeah.
And she took one tiny taste of it and said, "Oh, there's fish in this." And I said, "There's no fish in this." And it's vegetarian. So I dug around in there to show her, and sure as heck, there
There
was one of those
was.
little, Asian fish
Yeah.
flakes, a fish flake, like it's not even the
Wow.
size of your thumbnail, and flat, like a little tiny wafer in there, a
That's
little pink.
crazy.
And she said, "There, and it's
Wow.
shrimp flavored." She knew she tastes that and it's a big thing. So,
That's pretty
and,
wild.
for her, it's a health reason. She doesn't eat meat for that,
Okay.
hasn't since she's 8 years old.
Yeah.
Um, so, and yeah, so I've learned a lot and I share it with people. There's all kinds of people out there that are afraid to allow themselves to feel joy again or love
Yeah.
because they're afraid of the judgment of their friends or their
Right.
family or on social media. And I say,
Exactly.
I don't care what anybody thinks, and it's great. You want to voice
No,
your
I
opinion.
applaud
Go
you for
ahead.
that. I really do. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's yeah, and if they're really nasty, I'll just block and delete. Like it's really
Okay.
simple. See you. If they're really nasty,
Yeah.
if they're just voicing their opinion, occasionally I'll take them to task and say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This you say it's too quick for me to find love again after Louise. Well, it's 2023 she passed away. We're headed towards 2026 here.
Right.
What day am I allowed to be happy again? Like what,
Exactly. Yeah.
according to you, like give me a break. So I,
Yeah.
I love it. I share, and if I can inspire other people to stand up and say, yeah, I don't care what you think. I don't care. You can,
Yeah.
marginalize me, vilify me, ostracize me, whatever you want. I'm living, it's my life. It's my
Exactly.
and,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna love every single day of this life at 100 miles an hour. And that's what
Yeah.
Serena has allowed me to do. She's a brilliant lady. She's got a doctorate in law. She was actually passed the bar in California and
Oh,
was a
wow.
lawyer there. And,
Very cool.
she's got a Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, owns houses and rental houses in
Hmm.
Tennessee and Nashville. Like she's traveled to 40 countries before we ever met.
Wow.
I actually kind of laugh because the, you know, all her friends, they said, "You travel so much, you're never around." And she thought she traveled a lot.
Yeah.
And then we, joined up and now she's on my travel schedule. And she said it's a good thing she traveled as much as she did
She's used
because,
to
yeah,
it.
because nobody can go from zero to Jim. It's
Yeah,
impossible.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
you had to start somewhere in between and to keep up. So yeah, the trips with Serena have been wonderful. It's
Yeah.
I'm happy as I've ever been. Not happier,
Yeah.
but happy as I've ever been. And
It's
Louise
good.
is with us every single day. She
Awesome.
sends messages and the clouds and the sunsets and the waving grass, the flowers.
Hmm.
That's she's always
That's
there. The
awesome.
warm wind, she's there. So but I'm still alive and
Yeah.
you get one life. So I'm not going to waste
Exactly.
any of it sitting at home, being depressed and woe is me and, flagellating myself because I
Hmm.
lost what we had. I didn't lose it. It's still there. We still have that, her
Right.
and I, and we'll be together again. She was an angel, came down from heaven and went back to heaven.
Yeah.
And so I understand that. And, yeah, her pictures are everywhere. And like I say, reminders everywhere.
Cool.
Social media, yeah, I love sharing because it helps other people. And I get the
Yeah.
DMs, direct messages where they tell me thank you. They don't want to get involved with the online
Yeah.
stuff, but they'll send me the message, thank you, thank you. I lost my husband, I lost my wife, and my
Right.
family doesn't think it's time. And I found somebody, and I don't want to be judged. And let them judge. Let them judge. That's their problem, not
Yeah.
your problem.
Yeah, you do have to have a blind eye at times and ear on social media. My page isn't even as big as yours, but you do. I mean, you just have to ignore some things at times. And it is what it is. But it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun too, being online, being able to share stories, be able to talk to people
Mhm.
like yourself. And I really am very blessed myself. I grew up, and I'll give you a funny story right now where I'm sitting in my boss's office. I'm an auto mechanic. That's my career. Done this for 40 years now. And yesterday I was getting all prepared for our interview, and I get an email or a text from my cable supplier that internet's going to be down at my house. I'm like, oh man. So my boss, cool guy he is, give him a shout out, Jerry Regard from Ray's Auto, and he's like, you gotta give me a shout out. So he set me up in his office. I have some stuff going on, so, but it's really cool. I'm just blessed that I work with some cool people that allow me to do things like this and get some time off, and just I've met a lot of great people within the industry, and I've just been very blessed myself. And I know every day you wake up and you just look around and it's like, man, it's been pretty great. And even just talking to people that, I mean, I've grew up watching you on TV and videos, and some of the other people I've talked to, and it's just for me very humbling to be able to talk to people and just become friends with people like that also. And I really appreciate just the time you've given me today, and just had a good little talk, and just thought we'd just kind of keep a little casual on just a couple topics. And it's I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best in your continued journey in the outdoor world, and travels across the world and globe. And just always look forward to things that you put out online or on videos, and really appreciate it. And thank you.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, Jim. Have a great day and take care.
You too.